next. The coronavirus has taken yet another prominent South African. Casting director Moonyeenn Lee succumbed to COVID-19 related complications on Saturday. She was 76 years old. Her career spanned almost 50 years, during which she championed the cause of South African stories on the big screens. She was also known for standing up for the rights of local actors on big Hollywood budget movie sets. Moonyeenn Lee played a major role in steering the careers of countless of actors, directors and writers. Her notable credits include her work on the Oscar-winning movie Tsotsi, as well as Blood Diamond, Hotel Rwanda and even Black Panther. She was also the first South African invited to be part of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Science panel that votes for the Oscars, and the Television Academy that votes on the Emmys. Now, James Ngcobo, the artistic director at the Market Theatre, says he's lost both a friend and a colleague. He joins us now via Zoom from Johannesburg. Bob Ngcobo, thanks very much for your time, even at this difficult moment. This is, without a doubt, an incredible loss.
It is such a good loss, a terrible loss, Ayanda, for our industry. You couldn't find anyone in our industry who went out of her way in terms of the protection of the South African storyteller, who is the actor, the South African crew member, the South African directors, somebody who had such amazing clarity around mentorship of young script writers. Moonyeenn went beyond being just an agent. Her view was much wider than that. She was all about, when overseas companies come to South Africa to shoot these huge movies that they shoot, we must always make sure that there are young people. You know, we have an influx of young people that graduate from universities who have been studying creative writing, and really what they need is to be in collision with people from pockets of the world who have done this for years. And for Moonyeenn, it wasn't a negotiation.
Absolutely. And based on that, how do you think South Africa should best remember her, considering the contributions she's made?
The tenacity of that woman, the resilience of that woman, the absolute drive are things that we need to remember. For any young person who has a dream to represent actors or any creatives, there is nowhere else to look at but to look at Moonyeenn. She is your quintessential person that I feel, even in classrooms, when young actors, be it vets or UCT and all these places, there should be a module that speaks to how people like Moonyeenn was able to work. And Moonyeenn obviously made a lot of enemies in the industry because she was brutally honest.
Yeah.
And that honesty had a lot to do with how she went out of her way to protect the industry, and in that you are mollycoddling it to grow.
And that's exactly where I was hoping we'd end up in our conversation, right? There are typically tendencies to reflect in certain ways once people pass. But Moonyeenn, as you mentioned, was incredibly candid, and because of that did have to lock horns with some people at some stages, and was in some moments unpopular for it.
Yes, it's in, you know, when companies come here, you look at how with actors like Presley Chweneyagae, how Moonyeenn took Presley from a young actor who was acting in Rustenburg in some township hall to a huge star. And even when the movie was nominated for an Oscar, Presley was sent to LA to represent this film. And Moonyeenn was then making enemies because she would make sure that a visibility of a Presley or somebody of the ilk of Presley, when these things would have gone past post-production and these things are being exhibited, that you take further the mentorship of a young Presley today produces stuff himself. He's a director. He learned from Moonyeenn, and that is passing the baton, because sometimes we stand behind podiums and speak with such eloquence about mentorship, but we don't do it. Moonyeenn did it.
And based on that, you're an artistic director. To some people, you are seen as a direct colleague to someone like Moonyeenn. What do you take from her as someone who's worked closely with her in some respects?
Yeah, I mean, myself, I'm in Moonyeen's books, as you rightly said, that I'm the artistic director of the market, but there's an actor in me. I started as an actor and will always be one when an opportunity pops up. But Moonyeen was the first person when I was offered the position of being an artistic director of the market. I remember we went and sat at a restaurant called La Cucina de Ciro, and we had an amazing lunch that lasted 5 hours, and I was talking to Moonyeen. I'm just saying, oh, Moonyeen, I'm now the artistic director of the market. It is such a daunting task. And she said, it is a huge task. James, you need to walk into it with everything that is in your gut and just be driven to run things and run them properly. And that's what I've done at the market. And the idea of mentorship, I learned it from Moonyeen. I've been there for 6 years. I've had 36 young directors directing at the market. And that is how myself and other people who were with Moonyeen, how we learned from that woman. If you had the humility to learn, Moonyeen will teach you till next Thursday.
It's lovely to hear. Let's talk legacy, right? Here we are at this moment. In many respects, it's easier to remember Moonyeen just a few days after we learned of her passing, but that might become a bit more difficult in the years to come. How best do we keep her legacy alive?
I've always been of a belief that some of the things that we need to do as our industry is to make sure that in some of the awards that we have in this country, there has to be an award that is created that keeps the memory of Moonyeenn Lee alive. That means that some young kid who is, I don't know, at Hilton College or at Madibane at the moment, and who end up studying drama and they graduate, they get into the industry, they will hear about Moonyeenn Lee. And that for me is something I would advocate for very strongly, that there's some category that gets created that is about people that are breaking new grounds in the field of storytelling, that is created, that is named after Moonyeenn Lee, to keep, because I'm the big one for memory, and it is the most successful nations in the world I under that have mastered. I mean, are countries that have mastered memory, and people like Moonyeenn, we need to make sure that we keep not her ambers, but her fairness burning all the time.
And you know, James, what comes with unearthing new talent sometimes is a window for unintended consequences like exploitation and the likes, you know. In the more recent times, we've heard of particularly young, fresh talent speaking out against production companies, claiming perhaps that they're not being treated the ways through which they should. Take us through what some of Moonyeen's biggest concerns were, if you were able to speak to her about some of these issues, about the state of the industry at the moment. I mean, did she have any particular gripes, perhaps, about the ways through which things are currently progressing?
Yes, she definitely did, and Moonyeen, all the way up until her last breath, Moonyeen was always thinking about how do we make sure that actors are looked after. Because I can tell you now, and I sit in rooms at the market where we are concocting plans, and this is what we want to do, this is what we want to do, we want to get this director to do this, we want to do this work. Without an actor, those are all ideas in our heads. Because the actor is then the person that comes in and own that vision and be that vision. When people say, what a brilliant director, how do you see it? You see it through the work of what an actor is doing. And Moonyeen kept speaking about how important it is for young actors to find the right representation for themselves, to actually just be with an agent that is not all about the commission that you're bringing to them, but an agent that understands nurturing young talent. And a lot of us who were with Moonyeen, we were really protected from that, because you knew when you go on set, your job is to act. All the fighting, Moonyeen does it for you, and does it very well. That by the time you sign the contract, there is a beautiful amicability between the producers, your representative, and you as an actor, and you just go in there, put on costume, and immerse yourself in a biography that you are asked to play. And I always plead with young actors and say to them, this industry that we're in, it's not all rosy. It is one of the most difficult industries that a young person can ever get into, that is slowly growing in a country that is about an emerging economy, and sometimes the arts take a bit of a backbench. Young actors need to equip themselves with something very strong, an arsenal that they have next to themselves. Somebody who properly represents them, not somebody who's looking for commission. Because when you've got that, you will never be an actor who's in papers that you had a fight with this production company, because you don't get into that. You've got a Moonyeenn that is your fortress, that absolutely, and some of us now in the positions we're in, we've learned that from Moonyeenn, that when an actor comes to act at the market, they just come to act. We make sure that with all the little resources that we have, we show respect to an actor, and we say, we see you, we see your skill, we see what you're going to do to the theater, the palette, orbit that you're going to do. Come and do that. And so this is what Moonyeenn kept preaching, and to young actors, just be represented properly.
Yeah.
It can't be. Sometimes young people get into this industry with things that are not realistic. It is a business like anything else.
Yeah, and you speak about, I guess, a naivety that some young people have, and I think that's not, I guess, restricted just to acting and entertainment. How much of that nurturing do you think is still happening, before we let you go, within, acting and entertainment? I mean, I certainly get a sense that that's the most salient sentiment that you're remembering of Moonyeenn. So take us through how much of that nurturing you still think actually takes place within the industry.
It's still happening a lot, because I like what you said about the naivety that young people have also, and the gullibility that the young people walk into the industry with, and there are a whole lot of scrupulous people who are out there who are just waiting to go for the jugular, and this will carry on up until young actors just really understand that they need to be presented properly, and in that way they don't have to navigate all the other things. They have to deal with how they grow themselves as a brand, as a storyteller, and as raconteurs, and grow themselves properly. And when you're doing that, you are honing your skill, you are doing classes, you are working with humility as a young actor, and with an understanding that whatever you're doing has been done before, it will be done when you're not here. And that's how you enter this industry, not with bells and things. And then you just find somebody absolutely perfect for you, who becomes the extension of you, who sometimes goes into rooms that you don't go to because you're busy reading scripts. And when you've got that, I've seen so many beautiful young careers of actors just blossoming in a beautiful way, because they get that recipe at the beginning.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for being so generous with your reflections. Certainly appreciate your time and your insights. James Ngcobo is Artistic Director of the Market Theatre, reflecting for us there on the lives and times of legendary casting director Moonyeenn Lee here in South Africa.